Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to be tackling something that you have specifically requested help with.
Oh, and
Spotting misleading information. It's like navigating a minefield of data out there, isn't it?
yeah, it really can be. It can feel that way for sure.
So we are turning to the work of Guy Lakeman, who has some great ideas on how to build what he calls a baloney detection kit.
I like that. That's catchy.
Yeah, so we've got his writings on fallacies and baloney detection right here, ready to extract the most valuable nuggets for you.
Well, and what's fascinating is that Lakeman starts by pointing out this almost paradoxical idea that many people just assume they're well educated,
Right.
but they never stop to question if their education might have blind spots or, as he puts it, flaws.
That's such a good point. It's like thinking you're a great driver just because you've never had an accident. You could be missing some crucial defensive driving techniques.
Exactly, precisely. And this, Lakeman argues, is actually what makes us more susceptible to baloney. If we assume we already know everything, we're less likely to scrutinize new information, even if it's questionable.
So it's almost like intellectual overconfidence can be a weakness.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
It makes us less critical, less likely to ask those important why questions. And this is where Lakeman gets really interesting.
Okay.
He believes that artificial intelligence could actually help us become more discerning.
Hold on. AI can help us with this. I thought AI was more likely to create more baloney, not less.
Well, it's a valid concern for sure, and it's something to definitely keep in mind as AI develops. But Lakeman is actually working on something pretty cool.
Okay.
It's an AI-powered baloney detector that flags misleading information in real time. He even jokes that it yells at him when he's writing, catching his own slip-ups.
Okay, I have to admit, that's pretty cool. It's like having a super-powered fact checker built into your computer.
Yeah.
But even if we have AI on our side, Lakeman doesn't sugarcoat the problem.
No, he doesn't.
He says, and I'm quoting directly here, the internet is filled with dangerous garbage.
He's not wrong. And statistically speaking, there are more bad arguments out there than good ones.
Yeah.
And this is especially true with the way that media functions these days.
Absolutely. So where do we even begin to tackle this? Let's talk about this baloney detection kit. Carl Sagan, the famous astronomer, is often credited with popularizing this idea right, emphasizing skepticism and scientific thinking.
Exactly. Sagan's work was groundbreaking. But Lakeman takes it a step further,
Okay.
providing a more comprehensive toolkit for recognizing those sneaky tactics that can make bad arguments sound really convincing. These are what we call logical fallacies.
And he's visually mapped out these fallacies, hasn't he? I remember reading something about over 90 different types.
That's right. He's identified over 90. It's impressive, really. But don't worry, we won't be going through all of them today.
Okay, that's a relief. I was starting to feel a bit overwhelmed. So before we delve into specific fallacies, is
Yeah.
there anything about the structure of arguments themselves that we should know? Something that might help us spot when someone is trying to pull the wool over our eyes?
That's a great question. One crucial thing to understand is the difference between the person who's proposing an argument, who might be using baloney,
Right.
and the person responding, who might use weak arguments to deflect or counter. Recognizing these roles can really help you see the dynamics at play.
So it's not just about the content of the argument itself, but also who's making it and why.
Yeah.
Their motivations.
That's really insightful.
Okay.
Are we ready to unpack a few of these common fallacies? I'm ready to put on my baloney detecting goggles.
Let's do it. We'll focus on a few that are particularly prevalent and that are really relevant to the kind of information you're likely encountering. Let's start with ad hominem, which is Latin for to the person.
Okay.
And this fallacy is when someone attacks the person making the argument instead of addressing the argument itself.
Oh, I see this all the time on social media. Like, instead of discussing a politician's policies, people attack their appearance or their personality. It's everywhere. You're absolutely right. It's a classic distraction tactic, and it's very effective. It appeals to our emotions rather than our logic, making us dismiss an argument without really considering it.
Right.
Think of it this way. If you can discredit the messenger, you don't have to deal with the message itself.
Oh, that's true. It's like saying don't listen to Einstein's theories about physics because he has crazy hair.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous when you put it like that.
Exactly. So the next time you encounter an argument, ask yourself, is the focus on the argument itself?
Right.
Or are they trying to discredit the person making it?
Okay, that's a great takeaway. What's another common fallacy we should be aware of?
Let's talk about the red herring. This one is all about diverting attention away from the real issue by introducing something totally irrelevant. like a magician using misdirection to pull off a trick.
Oh, that's a good analogy. Can you give me like a real-world example?
Sure. Imagine a politician being asked a tough question about their questionable environmental record. Instead of addressing it directly, they might start talking about their opponent's tax returns,
Oh, yeah.
a completely unrelated topic, to shift the focus.
That's so frustrating, but it happens all the time, doesn't it?
It does. And it works because it plays on our very limited attention spans.
Oh, that's true.
We get distracted by this shiny new object and forget what the original issue even was.
Oh, it's a classic bait and switch tactic.
It is.
Okay, I'm starting to see how subtle these tactics can be. It's like they're playing chess with our minds.
That's a great way to put it.
Hmm?
And speaking of mental chess matches, let's talk about the straw man fallacy.
Okay.
This is where someone misrepresents their opponent's argument, making it easier to attack.
So like building a flimsy scarecrow and pretending it's a real threat.
Exactly. They twist the original argument into something much weaker, knock it down, and then claim victory.
Right.
But the real argument was never addressed.
I've definitely seen this happen in political debates where one candidate will oversimplify or completely misrepresent their opponent's position and then attack that distorted version.
Yeah.
It's so misleading.
It is. And what's interesting about this fallacy is that it often preys on our desire for simplicity. We tend to gravitate towards those easily digestible arguments, even if they're oversimplifications.
So we have to be careful not to fall for those overly simplified versions of complex issues. It's like judging a book by its cover. We might be missing the whole story.
That's a great analogy. Now, we've just scratched the surface of Lakeman's work here, but I think it's already clear how important it is to be aware of these tactics.
Yeah.
We need to be active participants in the information we consume,
Right.
not just passive recipients.
Absolutely. Awareness is the first step towards building a truly effective baloney detection kit. But it's not enough to just identify these fallacies, is it? We also need to understand how they work on us psychologically speaking.
That's a great point. And that's what we'll explore next. We'll dive into the psychology of misinformation and why these fallacies are so effective at manipulating our beliefs and decisions.
I'm already feeling more equipped to handle all the information that's thrown at me. This is awesome.
That's what we like to hear. But before we move on, do you remember what Lakeman said is statistically true about the ratio of good arguments to bad ones,
Yeah.
especially in today's media landscape?
He said there are more bad arguments than good ones.
That's right. So remember, even armed with this newfound knowledge, you'll still have to remain vigilant.
Duly noted. Let's move on to the psychology of this. This is where it gets really interesting.
All right, so we've started to build our baloney detection kits, right? And we've seen how these fallacies can be used to manipulate our thinking.
Right.
But to really become masters of baloney detection, I think we need to understand why these tactics work so well on us,
Okay.
on a psychological level.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
Remember, humans aren't purely rational beings, right? Our emotions play a huge e.g. role in how we process information
Right.
and how we make decisions.
So you're saying that even when we know we should be objective, our emotions can sometimes cloud our judgment.
Exactly. And fallacies often exploit this, right?
Yeah.
They exploit our fears, our biases, our desires.
Okay.
They kind of bypass our rational minds and tap into those deeper emotional responses.
Wow. So when you put it that way, it sounds like our own brains can be used against us. It's kind of unnerving, isn't it?
It can be, yeah, for sure.
Right.
But by understanding these psychological mechanisms,
Right.
we can become more aware of our own vulnerabilities
Yeah.
and less likely to be swayed by these manipulative tactics.
Right.
Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. So self-awareness is a key part of baloney detection.
Yeah.
It's not just about knowing the fallacies. It's
Right.
about knowing ourselves.
Precisely. It's about understanding your own biases, your own triggers, the things that make you more likely to accept something uncritically.
It's like knowing your weaknesses so you can work on strengthening them. Right.
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it. Now, remember how we talked about Lakeman's AI baloney detector?
Oh, yeah, the one that catches him making mistakes in his own writing.
That's the one. Well, that's a perfect example of how even experts can be fooled,
Oh, wow.
right? It's a reminder that none of us are immune to these biases. We all have blind spots.
Okay, so it's an ongoing process. We're always learning and refining our skills.
Absolutely. It's like physical exercise. You need to keep working those muscles to stay in shape.
So how do we keep our baloney detection muscles in top shape? What are some like practical exercises we can do?
Well, one way is to constantly challenge yourself. Don't just stick to sources that confirm your existing beliefs.
Right.
Seek out diverse perspectives even if they make you uncomfortable.
That sounds tough, but important. It's like trying a new food you think you'll hate. You might be surprised.
Exactly. And remember, critical thinking is a collaborative process.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to discuss ideas with others, to ask questions, to seek feedback.
So it's not about isolating ourselves and becoming distrustful of everyone.
Not at all. It's about building a community of curious, open-minded individuals
Right.
who are also committed to seeking truth.
Okay, that's reassuring. It's much easier to stay motivated when you have others to share the journey with. Okay, so we've talked about building self-awareness, challenging our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
What else can we do?
Well, Lakeman actually outlines some key principles for building what he calls a robust baloney detection kit.
Okay.
Think of them as like actionable steps.
Okay, I'm ready to upgrade my kit. What's the first step?
It's called independent confirmation.
Right.
And that basically means you can't just rely on a single source of information.
Right.
Right. You have to verify facts from multiple and unbiased sources.
So cross-checking information is essential.
It's fundamental. Don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper, especially if something seems too good or too bad to be true.
It's like getting a second opinion from a doctor before a major surgery. You want to be sure.
Exactly. Perfect analogy. The next principle is open debate. This is similar to what we were just talking about.
Okay.
Don't just stick to sources that confirm your existing beliefs. Expose yourself to different viewpoints,
Okay.
even if they challenge your assumptions.
So break out of those echo chambers and those comfortable bubbles.
Exactly. And then remember that even experts can be wrong. He calls this principle question authority.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask probing questions, even of people with impressive credentials.
I love that. It's like that saying, trust but verify. What's next on the list?
Consider multiple hypotheses.
Okay.
When you're trying to explain something, don't just jump to the first conclusion that comes to mind.
Okay.
Explore alternative explanations and test each one rigorously.
So don't settle for the easy answer. Be open to different possibilities.
Yeah, that's the essence of scientific thinking. And speaking of science, Lakeman also emphasizes falsifiability.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but refresh my memory. What does that mean?
It basically means a claim can be tested and potentially disproven.
Right.
Right. If a claim can't be tested, it's not very useful. It might be true, but you have no way of knowing for sure.
So a good scientific claim needs to be able to withstand scrutiny. It's like a hypothesis that can be tested through experiments, right?
Exactly. Another essential element is objective measures.
Okay.
The quantifiable data is always more reliable than vague assertions.
So numbers over gut feelings.
Exactly. Numbers can be manipulated, of course, but they provide a much more solid foundation for analysis than subjective opinions.
That makes sense. What's the final tool in our baloney detection kit?
It's a classic, Occam's razor. This principle suggests that when you have competing hypotheses that explain something equally well,
Right.
the simpler explanation is usually the better one.
So don't overcomplicate things unnecessarily, right? Keep it simple.
Exactly. It's not foolproof, but it's a very useful guideline, especially when you're navigating complex issues.
This is fantastic. I'm starting to feel like a real baloney detective.
That's the spirit. But remember, it's not just about identifying baloney.
Right.
It's about seeking truth
Yeah.
and engaging in thoughtful discussion.
You're right. It's not about becoming like a cynic
Right.
and just dismissing everything as fake. It's about being discerning
Right.
and being open-minded at the same time.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But with the right tools and the right mindset, you can navigate the information landscape with confidence and clarity.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's incredibly empowering.
I agree. Now, remember how Lakeman talked about the internet being filled with dangerous garbage?
Yeah, it was a pretty stark warning.
Well, he was particularly concerned about the impact of fake news.
Right.
And how it spreads online. It's a serious problem.
Yeah, it is. It seems like every time I open social media, there's another outrageous headline or some story that turns out to be completely fabricated.
Yeah, think of virus spreading misinformation and infecting people's minds.
That's such a good analogy. It really is. So what are some specific red flags we can look for to identify fake news?
Well, Lakeman stresses the importance of checking the source.
Right.
Is it a reputable news organization?
Yeah.
Or is it some obscure website with a clear bias?
Right. I've definitely fallen for clickbait headlines before, only to realize later that the source was completely untrustworthy.
Yeah, it happens to all of us. That's why it's crucial to be vigilant. Look for signs of bias, like emotionally charged language or one-sided presentations.
So basically, anything designed to manipulate my emotions rather than inform me objectively?
Exactly. Pay
Mm.
attention to the URL.
Okay.
Fake news sites often try to mimic legitimate news organizations by using similar names or web addresses. It's like those phishing scams,
Right.
but for information.
Oh, wow. That's sneaky. Anything else we should be wary of?
Look for factual errors or inconsistencies in the reporting.
Yeah.
If something doesn't add up, or if the information contradicts what, other sources are saying, that's a major red flag.
Yeah, good point. I've seen articles before where like dates or locations of events are clearly wrong or don't match up with other reports.
Absolutely. And don't forget to scrutinize the images or videos that are used in the article. Fake news often uses misleading or out-of-context visuals to support their claims.
I never really thought about that before, but it makes perfect sense. A picture can be worth 1,000 words, but those words can be lies.
Exactly. And finally, remember the importance of seeking out diverse perspectives. Don't just rely on one news source, no matter how much you trust them. Expose yourself to different viewpoints to get a more balanced understanding of the issue.
Yeah, it's about becoming like a well-rounded news consumer, not just picking a side and sticking to it blindly.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. By developing these habits, you can become a more informed and critical thinker, less susceptible to fake news and manipulation.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I'm finally learning how to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
That's fantastic. But remember, it's an ongoing process. There will always be new challenges and new forms of misinformation to contend with.
Okay, so vigilance is key. But we don't have to go it alone, do we?
Exactly. We can build communities of critical thinkers.
Yeah.
We can share resources. We can support each other on this journey.
I love that idea. It's like we're all in this together, fighting for truth and clarity in a world that's increasingly filled with noise and misinformation.
That's a great way to think about it. And remember, the more you practice these skills, the more confident you'll become
Yeah.
in your ability to discern truth from fiction.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far. But before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
there's one more piece of the puzzle that I think we need to address.
Oh, and what's that?
Well, we've talked about how to spot baloney.
Yeah.
We've talked about the psychology behind why these fallacies work.
Mm-hmm.
But what about when we're the ones communicating? How can we make sure our own arguments are sound, are persuasive, are free of baloney?
That's a brilliant question, and it's a perfect segue into our final point.
So we've spent all this time learning how to spot baloney and why it works on us, but what about flipping the script? How can we become better communicators ourselves, making sure our own arguments are clear, persuasive, and, baloney free?
That's the next level of this isn't it. It's not just about defense. It's about offense, too.
Exactly. We don't want to accidentally become like purveyors of baloney ourselves.
Right. And that's where understanding these fallacies becomes even more valuable.
Right.
By knowing how they work, we can consciously avoid using them in our own communication.
Yeah.
We can really strive to be more precise, more logical, more focused on the substance of our argument, rather than resorting to these rhetorical tricks.
It's like learning the rules of a game so you can play it fairly, and strategically. You know what moves to avoid, what traps to watch out for.
That's a great analogy. So, for example, instead of attacking someone's character when we disagree with them, that classic ad hominem,
Right.
we can focus on addressing their points directly, respectfully, and with evidence.
So it's about elevating the quality of discourse, both online and offline.
Absolutely. By holding ourselves to a higher standard of communication, we can contribute to a more informed, a more rational public sphere.
Yeah.
It's about leading by example.
I love that idea. It's like we're not just building individual baloney detection kits. We're contributing to a collective toolkit for better communication as a whole.
Precisely. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a little bit of a challenge, and it connects back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You asked about real-world examples of these fallacies in action, right?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if I can spot them now that I'm more aware of them.
Well, I think the best place to start is with your own consumption of information.
Okay.
Whether it's news articles, social media posts, political speeches, or even just casual conversations, start paying attention to the arguments being presented.
So basically just be more mindful, more observant.
Exactly. Ask yourself,
Yeah.
are there any ad hominem attacks kind of lurking beneath the surface? Any straw man distortions? Any attempts to divert attention with a red herring?
It's like turning on that baloney detection radar everywhere we go.
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't just to be right.
Right.
It's to be thoughtful, to be informed, to be engaged.
I love that. Well, I think this is a perfect place for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through all of this.
Of course, it's been my pleasure.
This has been an incredible deep dive. It's truly changed the way I think about information and communication.
That's great to hear.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of baloney detection. We encourage you to continue this journey of becoming more discerning consumers of information and more effective communicators. Until next time, stay sharp, everyone.